What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Artist Emancipation Podcast. I have another little treat for you guys today because I am here with Josh Emerick, who is a video producer and just a freaking badass online. I absolutely love your Instagram. I love what you post into the world. I even peeped your social media beforehand. Well, I do everybody, but I creep on you, right? So I love the little description that you put in your profile. I use emotional storytelling to improve connection. I think that is so beautiful. And especially coming from an artist, I think that's what we all need a little bit more of in our life. But Josh, I'm going to give you the mic. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you find yourself here.
Yeah, I mean, one, thank you so much for having me on the show. I love any time I get to kind of talk about myself, talk about my process. But I think more importantly, what I love about your show is it is really about celebrating the artistic side of things. For me, I'm a video guy. I make music videos, corporate brand storytelling, documentaries. The list is broad and wide, and I think that's the fun part about being a creative is you get to experiment, you get to learn so many different things. And even kind of coming into like the emotional storytelling side of things is it's so hard to give that elevator pitch, to kind of say, here's what I do, and to do it very succinctly. For me, I think we're really good at concepting. When we work with our clients or we work with any project, we're good at understanding the concept, the theme, the feeling, and then applying that emotional storytelling piece to it, which is what makes people actually connect and feel like it's not just a pretty video, but it's something that they can latch their teeth into. So emotion, we're all humans here. Everyone wants to be logical and they want to think logical, but art is illogical. It's creative thinking. I feel like the difference in a normal video and a really good video is this feeling around it that you can't quite put your finger on it. And that often comes from our clients. That comes from where the heart is in a lot of this stuff. So that's my long-winded intro to emotional storytelling and a little bit about myself.
Love it. No, I love that you say artistry is just, it doesn't make sense, right? It's chaos. I love to say art is chaos because we have no idea what's going on. A lot of people don't, and then it finally just breaks away and something comes through from that chaos, and that's what you bring to life. So how do you find that process when you're working with clients, doing a video? Now, I know personally, my end, I know jack shit about video, right? So I'm sure your clients are the same way. How do you present to them the idea that hey, this is what's going to happen and this is what we're going to portray? It just seems like a wild thing to try to get a client to latch onto.
Well, I started in music videos and still so much of that work is there. And at least a lot of times when I see people do music videos wrong, it's usually in this selfishness. To me, artistry is kind of this collaborative process. That's the viewpoint that I look at it from, especially working with a client. Oftentimes, it's not me presenting a crazy creative or some crazy idea. It's listening. Listening is like the superpower above all else. Is can I ask a good question and can I listen intently? And then can I kind of formulate what they're saying into a concept that they're excited about? So, if we're talking about from a customer service or from a client acquisition standpoint, oftentimes it's listening better. It's really relaying what you're hearing and then delivering a concept that's not mine, but it's ours. So my process really our old tagline back in the day was ideas made possible. And that was very intentional because I'm not good at ideas. As a creative, I'm not an idea guy. That's not where I naturally go. I'm really good about getting people excited about ideas. I'm really good at enabling people to become really great creatives. Those are my superpowers.
Yeah.
But what I'm really good at in the concepting phase is listening and saying, hey, I'm hearing this. Where does this song come from? What's the heartbeat of your brand? Tell me what makes you unique, what your strong points are. And then kind of saying, here's the filmmaking endeavors and applications and film types and art direction that we can apply to your idea to make it possible. So It's a very much done together. One of my big beefs is I don't work with a lot of labels. I don't do a lot of RFPs, and mostly because there's no relationship there. So I can only be successful as an artist if I have a strong relationship with my clients, if I really understand where these ideas come from and kind of understand hey, what's your bigger picture goal? Because it's not to get a music video. It's not even to get a video. It's for you to become confident in your marketing, in your storytelling, and to feel hey, I have something to be proud of here.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is so good. Yeah. The collaboration part is something that I really strive for with my clients too, because it's we were talking a little bit before, but you said something that was very important. It's nobody cares about your stuff besides you, right? And it's how do we kind of get people to care about our stuff? And it's through that creation process and understanding truly what our end goal is. And that collaboration is so intense because if it's not our own personal project, we have to understand as much as we possibly can about that in order to create something, right? So I love that. And what you're speaking to, it sounds like took a lot of experience and working through to find like your superpowers and to understand all of this about the creation process. So take us through kind of some of your earlier projects. Maybe there were some blips or some mishaps that happened, but like what did you learn early on that led you to have such an awesome view on creation now?
Well, a handful of things really come to mind. We got started back in 2011, and it was like 2012 when we did our first music video, and that was like the thing that kind of really hit for me. As someone who used to have a lot of friends in bands, seeing that dream, like that passion, I feel like as an artist, when we can speak our audience's language, so my clients being musicians, I understand what their fan base is looking for. Mm-hmm. But in order to actually help serve them is understanding what their story, what their message is. Early on, a lot of our music videos, like they were hit or miss, where like certain ones we'd look at and we'd be like, why was this one so good and why was this one so bad? And it wasn't even the visuals that were bad for us. It was the process or how clumsy we were on set or, me getting frustrated and not being able to communicate my points very well. So we kind of had to peel back the layers and ask, what is it that's making these projects great and these projects not so great? And that's kind of when we discovered the relationship piece. The biggest differentiator was we would have 2-3 meetings with our clients beforehand, so we'd feel like we had buy-in into their project, whereas the ones that were just price shoppers that we were basically determining via like Facebook messages or text message to like land this in, there was no relationship there. It was all transactional. So for me, I realized I have to actually give myself and give my heart to the client in order to like get buy-in for this. So if they can't communicate their idea and if I can't communicate my approach to this, then we're kind of starting off on the wrong side of things. Fast forward those first 7 years, like up till 2018, we really were trying to be filmmakers. We were trying to do the best work, the highest quality work. And it was about the gear, it was about the cameras, it was about the lensing. And we had this relationship element in these pieces and processes that we go through, but it wasn't so ironed out. Around 28, we put out really fantastic work, but we have no work coming in. And we're in this big dry spout. And it's like, we just did our best work, but nothing's coming in. So I had to kind of go back to people and ask them, I'm like, what is it that you like about working with us? And it all centered around this idea of experience. People would get excited on set, or they'd say, there's this moment where your team was really... And I realized what we were selling was not music videos. It wasn't our technicality. It wasn't our quality. It was the way people feel when they're working with us. So to make a film that feels some way to an audience, we have to feel the same way about our clients. So it's all these feelings and emotions bundled up. And what I've really found is like working slow, being intentional, building the relationship. It's the foundation for being able to do filmmaking really, really well. Over the years, there's been so many trials, so many things that we've done wrong. But the longer I've done it, the more I've realized it's like, okay, like we are delivering intangible things left and right, and everyone comes to us seeing the tangibles.
Right. I don't know. I just think it's like such a beautiful thing because there's a difference between a marketing company and then like an artist, right? And how you're saying this, like, it's so on the artist side because like the artist feels things. They want to show the audience like what the human experience is. And like I feel like a marketing thing, it's like do it as fast as possible, as good as possible, and then it's out, right? And I think as artists, this is our job. We have to kind of tell people the difference between those two things, right? Because a lot of clients, but my clients especially, don't know that there's a difference there, right? And it's like this push and pull of like, okay, well, if you want this really good thing, it may not come in a week. It may take a month. It may take 2 months, but it's going to be so fucking good and so fucking heartfelt as compared to a marketing company who's like, we can push it out in 2 days and you'll have it and you'll be good to go. So it's like, well, what are you looking for?
So you bring up a really, really good point. And to me, this marketing word, I'm always trying to stab at a little bit, and I like to change it to storytelling because it's one and the same. You get into marketing and advertising, those are two very distinct things. Like you're making content for marketing to be able to tell your story. Advertising is distribution, targeting, and it's really looking at an audience and being intentional about where you put that money, put that effort, put that focus. But marketing is storytelling. So while they are disconnected and they are two separate conversations, I think they're rooted in like when I'm first working with a client, a lot of the times if we start talking marketing or distribution or how you're going to use this content, I'm very intentional about saying we're shifting to a strategic conversation now and not a filmmaking conversation, because the filmmaking does matter and it's the tactics and it's the execution. But when I can uncover your story, now we can apply that to marketing. Like if I'm working with a band, it is incredibly important to ask, are you guys going to play live shows? Are you going to interact? What is that message? If you're going to talk on stage, what are some of the things that you're going to talk about? How are you going to connect with your audience. So when you think about marketing and storytelling, it is connecting with that fan base. And then you can apply filmmaking tactics to it that builds confidence to talk about these things. And you're seeing this massive divide right now in content marketing versus filmmaking. They are two separate things. Content marketing isn't any lower or less valuable than the filmmaking efforts, and filmmaking isn't more valuable. They actually work together, and it's figuring out how to make those things work together. If you do the most bomb-ass music video that you can possibly see, but if you don't have the content marketing, the entry points into your brand, no one's going to watch it and no one's going to care. You need to humanize your brand through storytelling, which is marketing.
Oof. You just blew my mind a little bit.
I love strategic conversations.
That's awesome. No, because it's always like in my brain been this battle between the two, and it's like, oh, they can work together and they should work together, right? Like that's how everything should be. But I freaking love that. Who are you watching in the space right now? And it doesn't even have to be a filmmaker, but is there anybody that you think does this really well?
I think someone I've looked at for a long time is Jacob Owens. Filmmaker, serial entrepreneur, and there are things that I agree with him on, and there are things I don't agree with him on. But the one thing that I feel like I've been clicking with, and I think musicians, artists, creatives of any type could really learn from this, is for me, I've had this massive shift, at least in the sense of no one cares about my art. My art really doesn't matter that much. And what they do care about is they care about Josh Emerick, the creative. There's all this dilemma around building brands, making things look bigger than what they are. But the fact of the matter is like the most valuable content you can make is yourself. Mike Kim has this book called You Are the Brand, and he says the best logo you can ever make is a picture of your face. People hire people. People work with people. The more, when I'm making content or when I'm putting things out there, I'm trying to give people the unfair advantage of meeting me before I meet them, because it drops their guard and it makes them feel more comfortable to where they can reach out to me, they can have a conversation with me. So in this content marketing side of things, I'm trying to make pieces of content that humanize me, that make it very inviting, because I'm this person that does, like, while I'm an introvert and my battery can be shut off, quality time is my number one love language. So when I can connect with someone, have a great conversation, it really fills up my battery. It reminds me of my purpose. It makes me very excited. And I think Jacob Owens has had this really powerful impact in the fact of he just puts out so much content and so many things. And I can't think of a single time I've watched a single piece of his final content, but I watch his BTS stuff. I watch all the things where he talks about building his business. And I know for a fact he is a fantastic filmmaker without ever having to watch a single piece of content.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think content, especially for filmmakers now, because there's such a video focus, like you don't necessarily have to post like these final projects for every post, right? It's like you get to use your genius to like do an intro video about yourself, which is fucking amazing, right? But I want to talk a little bit about your content specifically, because that's how I got drawn in to getting to know you and eventually bringing you on the podcast. But I think this was like maybe 1 or 2 years ago. You know, for the listeners who don't know, he's in the same state as me, which is kind of rare for all my guests. They're usually in different countries, different states. So he was close. I thought he was really cool. Like his video work was amazing. But there was a shift. Like shortly after I started to follow you, you got really personal and you started to share these struggles that you were going through with your business. And I was like, holy shit, like this is what needs to be talked about in the creative space. So can you speak a little bit to what caused that shift and what caused you to start sharing these really vulnerable creative aspects?
Yeah, I think there are so many low points in a business and there are so many lessons to be learned in that. But at the same time, the patience in my head at the time was just like, man, I am tired of it being so hard and I'm tired of always having to put on the smile. There's this word authenticity that floats around all the time and it can mean a lot of different things, but as soon as there's a camera on, it's like really kind of not that inauthentic. For me, the video that you're talking about, I just kind of was fed up, and I was fed up coming off of years of kind of going into that marketing mindset of making efficient content, things that were only for my clients. And I felt like we were watering down our creativity all the time. And I'm sitting here feeling like we have so much potential. My people are so incredible. And, it's been a lot of reflecting. The last 8 months lately have been rebuilding our business, what we stand for, and really me kind of getting back to like just putting out content that I want to put out that's fun, not putting out content that speaks to a super specific audience. A lot of my content, I've been promoting myself pretty hardcore since like 2013. So I have 1,000 pieces of content of value that I've added to the world. But at a certain point, I feel like my value is all for others and not for myself. Now the shift of the content I've been making is like, what would Josh 5, 6, 10 years ago be stoked to find? Like, I want to make things for myself and for my past self, things that will attract and level up other creatives, because my heart beats for that. This work is so incredibly difficult. And, I feel like watering creative down, not working with my people consistently, making everything a financial decision instead of a creative decision. Now, running a business, profitability can be a beautiful thing. It allows you to fight another day. If you're not charging your worth, you're also not setting up that client for working with you in the future, because you're not able to cover your bills and provide for them. So I can understand the financial side of things, but also there's the artist inside that, like, I feel like this era has been getting back to that internal artist and proving to myself that, hey, we are good storytellers, we are good filmmakers, and I'm tired of making a bunch of content for my clients, whereas I'd rather make content for myself that invites me in to meet more fantastic clients, to be able to do more filmmaking projects, and to be able to provide more jobs for my people. That's the long and short of it. But there is power in making content that invites people in, that connects with them. And for me, I don't really care about views or likes or things like that. Those are validators, but at the end of the day, it's like, am I actually connecting with and setting the stage for people to meet the real me online? If me to go away in real life was to go away, does my online presence communicate the same thing as me meeting someone in real life?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that artists struggle with a lot is this idea that we're building a business and then we're an artist. So they're these two separate entities, right? And it's like, maybe for, a banker or somebody, it can be two different entities, but like as artists, it's one. And we can't separate from our art, right? So like if we're trying to build this business and it's strictly focused on the marketing part, the efficiency part, the not building relationships with people, it's just all about money. And this is something that I went through like 2 years ago. It was just like, I thought success was the amount of money I made. So like I left the artistry in the background and I was like, people don't care about that. I don't care about that. Like, yeah, I'm a good artist, but whatever. Like that's not success, right? So it's like if you focus on the wrong things, the amount of just disappointment you're going to continue to feel, even with your bank account being stacked, or the amount of clients that you have, but they don't respect you. You know what I mean? Like these are the things that artists get stuck in, because they're like, what am I doing wrong that I feel so shitty, but I'm successful, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a mind fuck.
So 2023 was our biggest financial year we ever had. And it was the least happy I've ever been in running my business, because every project was a reaction. It was a financial decision. And it was, me trying to provide for my family. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I noticed that I was compromising what I felt good art looked like. And I was adding all this stress, and we were making things more efficient. And it really was, I'd say 70% side on our client side and only 30% benefit on our side. And I'm not saying it has to be equal or fair or anything like that, but I'm saying for me it had been that way for a couple of years, and sure, we made bigger numbers than ever before, but I didn't feel successful. I didn't feel happy. And one of the things that I've said for a long time is, like, from an artist standpoint, I hope I'm peaking in my 80s. One thing that I've been trying to work on and shifting is, like, I'm 34 years old. There's still a lot of time to be successful. And I think there's a massive amount of pressure, especially on social media, of all these successful people. I don't know how many of them are actually successful from a financial standpoint, but I've been trying to remind myself that I'm like, financial success can come later. Like, if I was to look back, at 3 years ago, Josh, and it's like even talking to 10 years before, the amount of money I'm making, that Josh would still be very proud. And sometimes it's going back in time and asking myself, how would past Josh feel about present day Josh? And I am doing just fine from a numbers standpoint. Would I like to make more money? Would I like to be valued more? Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm only 34. My 40s, my 50s, my 60s, my 70s, I think that I'll continue on this uptick because I am on an uptick. And it's just being patient with myself and reminding myself that everything might not be perfect, but there's rarely ever going to be a circumstance where it is. Maybe I'm going to peak at my 80s. I'm not saying I want to be poor until I'm 80, but I'm saying, like, there's going to be an uptrend. Like, right. My skills, my finances, the way I make relationships, the art that we're making, it's all on an uptick, and I got to remind myself that sometimes.
Yeah, that's amazing. And especially if you put the focus on like filling your cup first, which we talked about this on our prior conversation, but like the amount of people pleasing that has happened in our careers just like absolutely left us dry, right? Like we didn't have anything to give ourselves at the end. And as artists, as egotistical or as selfish as it sounds, like you have to create art for yourself first. Otherwise, your clients are going to be upset. The work is going to be shit. Like, you won't be happy. Like, it all has to stem from your happiness.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, even even like a part of this last 8 months, like in the shift, is like getting back to the business. In 2013 to 2016, Josh, when he didn't have client work, he was finding ways to use his time and to be a filmmaker and to make passion projects on the side. That has been a massive shift for me and my people. Is like, okay, if we don't have our books completely full, we're going out, we're shooting short films, we're shooting proofs of concepts, we're trying to get reps in different areas, because that's where growth actually comes from. I don't have a single clue what I'm going to do as a short form narrative, feature film, documentary side of things. I don't understand the funding, but those are the challenges and the things that I'm trying to figure out in the next 3 to 5 years. And I know it's going to take time. Like right now, I'm ready to kind of eat some shit and make some mistakes in these other areas. Like I want to go pitch to some people and say, you're out of your mind, we'd never invest a dime into you, because that's going to put a chip on my shoulder. That's probably going to be mostly positive in the sense of like, well, I'm going to figure this out. You're going to tell Josh you can't do this? Well, I've seen that story play out before, where I'm like, let me figure it out. Like I will, maybe not tomorrow, but 5 years from now, I know I'm going to know more than I know today.
Yeah, and I think that the concept of making versus creating, which you just described perfectly, creating is like never been done before. Like we don't know what the fuck we're doing, but we crave that. As artistic people, we crave the experimentation, we crave the playfulness. We want to be told that we can't do it so we can go prove everybody wrong and figure out the process and then do it all over again. Tell me something else I can't do, right? Like that's just creatives in a nutshell. And it's so fun to watch, like 10 years ago, Shawna like playing on her computer. Like you said, you look back and you're like, shit, like you really did come a far way, right? And then like you just got to think like 10 years from this point, like where the fuck am I going to be? It may not even be in a film industry, you know what I mean? Like creatives are just all over the place, and that's what's fantastic about them.
There's a lot of doing the impossible.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love it. All right. So the artist emancipation, is all about kind of breaking through stigmas of, like artists can't make money, artists are kind of dumb, like they do drugs. So growing up, what was maybe the biggest one that you had to kind of tell to fuck off through life?
Man, so that's like a really, really tough one. I think all of us can kind of relate with the idea of, the feeling of almost like a sin to charge for this work, because this work is very fun. It's very passion driven. And I could talk about the money side of things, and I feel like I've went through that. But I would say the self-promotion side of things has been one of the hardest things to kind of get through. As an artist, most of us don't want to promote. Most of us don't want to talk about our thing because it sounds braggadocious. A massive shift that I had to go through was, if I'm not endorsing myself, I'm not able to create as many jobs for my people. Oftentimes, what helps me kind of get through these things is seeing it bigger than myself, getting out of that selfishness and saying, like, we do really amazing work, and for us to meet more clients and to do more work is actually good in the world. So coming from that lens, it's made it a lot easier for me to promote myself and understand this is the value that I provide, and we need to provide that value. We have a responsibility to provide that value. Now, I'm from and still live in Zanesville, Ohio, and like a lot of my family, like we can definitely have our y'alls and hey, and speaking has been a massive level of insecurity for me.
Yeah.
Like 10 years ago, Josh absolutely would not be on a podcast because he was so ashamed of the way that he spoke, and he felt so unintelligent. And, I still struggle with that to this day. I still mess words up all the time. But for me, a lot of it is realizing that the words and the technicality don't matter. It's how you connect with people, where your heart is beating, and just realizing that's like, there's always going to be someone that's better at something than you. And that's part of improvement and like growing. And, like if we can get out there and we can promote ourselves, I promise you it's not braggadocious. I promise you that it is just going to allow you to connect with more people. Like at the end of the day, most people hire me based on my personality, based on the level of trust that I communicate, the way that I care about the work that I do. So when I'm making content, it's never for the views or likes. What I'm trying to communicate is two very simple things: that we are extremely passionate about the work that we do, and that it's extremely fun to work with us. So every piece of content kind of comes through that lens of like, hey, I can talk about anything I want to. I can hit all these different angles. But as long as it's hitting those two metrics, that's what we're going to be best in class as. So that's kind of my big thing, is like promotion is extremely hard to get through, but it's also very valuable.
Which is so funny to me because you're honestly one of the most like well-spoken guests that I've had. Like you express your ideas very clearly and very directly, so...
But I didn't make that shift until 2019, so
yeah.
You're talking to Josh 6 years, 7 years into this. You're not talking to like 2019 Josh that like was just getting started fumbling up. So again, like even on the promotional side of things, like we get discouraged when we post a piece of content that doesn't perform. And then we say, we shouldn't even do that. Like the gold mine, the content that we're making, it is entry points and it is practice. Like Jay Shetty was on a podcast, and Jay Shetty's made so much content, and like he shared this one thought process on the way that they go about making content. He says, I'm not obsessed with perfection. I'm obsessed with 70% because I can always go back and I can say that content a little bit differently. As someone who didn't speak English as a first language, he mess up words all the time. And that gave me so much permission to say, hey, you can fumble up. And if anything, people are going to empathize with that because I'm not this picture perfect thing. You know, AI, everyone is focusing on AI and perfection and efficiency, and you got things like Opus Clip and ChatGPT. The thing that makes us human is our flaws and our errors. So the more I've realized is like fumbling up some words is actually going to make me more human. It's going to make me more approachable. It's going to make me more accessible. And what I want is for us to be fun and approachable. So for me, I'm like, what we're really competing on is that human element, on the flaws. Like that's what makes us valuable.
Yeah. And to me, it just makes sense, especially because you're meeting these clients in person, I would say 95% of the time, right? Like they're not going to be working with a robot. They're going to be working with you. So why would you not promote yourself? Why would you not put yourself out there instead of like some fucking AI thing? It just blows my mind.
Yeah. I mean, a super valuable lens is like, what's the best that can happen? Not what's the worst that can happen. What's the best that can happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Got to have that, that good mindset going on. That was probably one of my biggest struggles is I would always think the worst of a situation before it ever even happened. And then, like that kind of manifests itself and it's like, that's not the way to go.
Well, we're coming back to what we started with, which is emotion. We are emotional creatures. Exactly what you're talking about. I have that exact same thought. Our inner critic is the biggest thing that we have to get over most of the time, whether we're making art, whether we're promoting ourselves, whether we're doing our website for the 15th time, whatever the case may be, we're going to have that doubt because we're emotional creatures. And we have to let the emotion kind of take over first before we can go to logic, before we can come to a solution. So I'm not sitting here saying like, hey, pretend like it's all fine, like just go here. Just recognize it. Recognize that we're emotional. Recognize that we have these feelings and emotions that can be extremely powerful, negative, positive, all the range of things. But then ask ourselves, like, what's the solution? What's the best that can happen? Like, why should I maybe show up? Like, what are people missing out on me? Whether it's promotion or making art or connecting with people in real life.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. I love it. Josh, you have been amazing this entire time. I can't wait for people to listen to this. Last question. A lot of young artists listen to this podcast. What is one piece of advice that you would give maybe a high school artist about to go out into the world?
I guess if I was to give a piece of advice, I'm going to bring it back to what I feel like everything is kind of for me. And it's about people, whether it's my clients or whether it's my crew. I struggle with insecurity still to this day. And when I got started, I didn't start this from a filmmaking standpoint. I didn't know about the positions or anything like that. I thought this could be very helpful to people. Like I loved bands starting out. So a lot of it was like, how can I be helpful? How can I make a music video that would be really awesome for me and for them? And it was me and my buddies kind of doing everything because I really leaned into this two heads are better than one mentality where I don't have to have all the answers, but I need to have someone in the room that can provide me an answer. Sometimes that answer comes from my client, sometimes that comes from my crew, sometimes that comes from myself. And then mixing that with some confidence in decision making. The more you do things, the better you get at those. Like, don't compare your chapter 1, chapter 3, or chapter 5 to someone who's on chapter 70. Like, comparison can really be the theft of joy. So for me, it's getting outside of that and saying, who am I making things with? Who can I trust? Do they respect me? And just being able to have conversations around that and making decisions and making art around that. It's always leveled me up the fastest. When we sit here alone in our heads, it leads to bad things most of the time. It leads to a lot of that inner critic kind of taking over. But as soon as you have someone that you can echo off of and share support along the way, it makes it a much less lonely journey. You get to solutions significantly faster. You're able to process those emotions, and then you can apply some logic later on down the road.
Amazing. I can't wait for people to hear your story, your conversation, your intellect. Like it's just amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Tell us where we can find you on socials so everybody can see that vulnerable ass content.
Well, I so appreciate you for having me on. I love getting to do these things. While I'm on a lot of different social platforms, I'd say Instagram is number one. That's where I'm kind of doubling down all my effort, and a massive reason for that is just the personalization between Instagram stories, between being able to put out the content there. I feel like it's where I actually have a community of people that I message back and forth. It's not just me putting out content. You can follow me at JEMERICK, J Emerick, Instagram. And yeah, I put out a ton of content there. I have some YouTube stuff that's linked into my link tree. And in general, yeah, I'm just always trying to connect with people and share my story a little bit and share content and hopefully inspire other people to chase after the dream like I am.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. And he's very nice, guys. I messaged him directly and he responded.
Sort of nice. Sort of nice. Barely.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show. I cannot wait to see the projects that come from you in the future. It's going to be amazing.
Awesome. Appreciate you.